Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Raquel. Thank you, Jordi. It's really a privilege to be here. It's really something I have to be thankful for since the pandemics, this has been part of my life, and this has helped me a lot. So thank you, galera da Adrenalina. Number one job. Thank you so much. And now about cognitive dissonance and how we interpret who we are, how we deal with consequences of our choices. Basically, this is what the journey into this talk will lead us into. The brain. I am really passionate about studying the brain and studying neuroscience. This has been with me since 2016. I have read books about neuroscience. I have attended video conferences. I have made courses at Coursera. I have listened to podcasts and everything that people say that connects neuroscience with education, psychology, behavior, and everything else. You bet I will be with my eyes open into that. And my story, how does my story, all right, connect us with neuroscience? You see, I am married to a man who has a total different point of view from mine, politically speaking. So my story is that every morning when we sit for breakfast and we plan what's going to happen during the day, there is a situation or another that will bring the fact that politically the country is deteriorating, we are in hands of a thief, or that, before the far right is the one that controls the decisions in the country, nothing will be solved. Everything will be and continue in a mess. And there is no way we're going to survive under the dictatorship of our current president. And this, of course, is something that really dissonates with everything that I believe, with my ethics. I have a different perspective. I believe in democratic dialogues. I believe in equality. I believe in debate. I believe that far right is really manipulating, not only in Brazil, but in many other parts of the world. And there is greater danger into the power that has been given to far right. So you can imagine what it feels when you have to debate, when you have to talk to someone who simply wouldn't budge on their stance. People that are so attached to their beliefs that nothing, no matter how much light you try to cast on their eyes and see different perspectives, it just simply does not work. So what I do, I succumb. I succumb to conformity. I want to avoid quarrel. I want to avoid discomfort. I simply nod and agree and move on. But of course, there's a little bit of price on that. Of course, something inside of me, doesn't feel comfortable. And so, with all my studies, I was trying to find some answers. And then I moved into cognition. What is cognition? Cognition is when we have the ability to comprehend we have the mental process of knowing something. It comes from Latin, cognitionem, nominative cognitio, getting to know something. It's part of the past participle esteeming, conoscere, get to know, recognize. So I have to recognize the facts around me, confront them with my beliefs, and then move on from that point. Dissonance. What is dissonance? Again, from etymology, we have dissonantia, from the Latin, dissonant, something that is dissonare, something that does not sound accordingly, that generates noise, and noise generates a disturb in the force. Noise generates conflict. And luckily, I found people that brighten up the way into trying to understand more about the brain. This woman, Barbara Oakley, perhaps many of you have already heard about her. She has a degree in engineering and education, and she works in universities, and she has a groundbreaking book about learning how to learn and about a mind for numbers. This is the first book I got from her. And she is the one that introduced me to the Pomodoro technique and how the brain functions in the diffuse mode and the focus mode. So it's basically, she makes a lot of theory very easy to digest. I really recommend her course in Coursera. That was the first one. And then my three other writers that I learned to simply adore. I believe that, when you read something and you love so much what you read, it's like you get closer to the author. You begin to understand how their minds operate. We have here on the left, Elliot Arison, the one that wrote the book, The Social Animal. Then we have in the center, Lisa Feldman Barrett. She wrote How Emotions Are Made. Great book, fantastic book. You find all of them on TED Talks too. And on the right, the beautiful, good-looking, interesting man called Robert Sapolsky. He has written Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It was a bestseller. I am reading now from him the book called Behave. Very large book, also very interesting. And facts about how biology interlace with neuroscience and how many things that we believe we have a free will to decide on things. Technically, we may not have that free will to decide on things. We depend a lot on biological factors that we are not aware of. So they are the three, my pillars. They are my pillars. Elliot Arison, if you have the chance to watch his video on YouTube, I will link it later on. I believe you will fall in love with him too. He is probably older than 92 now. And the book he wrote in the 90s, but now together with his son, he has a new edition, so they're revising everything in this book. And he's a lovely person, lovely man. And how he got his ideas, well, his mentor was Leon Festinger's. And Leon Festinger was a behavioral psychologist, right, from the 60s, the 50s. Here there is a video. I'm not going to show this video, it's very old. This is from 1954, and they introduce here his experiment, the first experiment. As you see, we have the person at the table, and in front of him we have a tray with lots of knobs. So they were told that the job was just to turn a quarter turn right to each knob. First row, second row, third row. Basically, the job was that, to simply turn the knob. And the secret was that after they left this room, they would go to the waiting room. And in the waiting room, there were the other subjects that would perform the same thing in this experiment. And their job was, they were told that the person responsible to do that was absent that day, so they asked them to do that as a favor for the experiment, to tell the next person in the waiting room that it was a pleasant experience, that it was a nice thing that they had to do, that it was not dull and not boring at all, that they would certainly do it again. And the thing was, they were divided in two groups. One group was offered $1 to do that job, and the other group was offered $20 to do the same job. And, well, you can expect that the ones that would get $20 would do that with a lot more effort. They would do that nicely, and they would be enthusiastic to tell about how interesting and enjoyable the experiment was. However, it turned out to be just the opposite. The ones that were given $1 to tell the next person in line, the next subject to do the same experiment, they were the ones that had to change their attitude towards the experiment to be able to be, let's say, convincing, to be able to tell to the next person that they would try the experiment one more time. It was really enjoyable. The ones that got $20, they had nothing to worry about. They were doing that willingly, all right, but with an extra $20 in their pocket, so it made matters easy. The ones that got just $1, well, in order to really incorporate that element and make it convincing, they had to change their attitude toward the job. I will cover a lot more examples, so I hope the idea will become clear as we move on. And now the next example is a quirky one. Hopefully it's one that many of you will have already seen. It's a Friends episode that we have a Phoebe and a certain quote. Let's watch. Whoops.
Hey.
Hello. Hey.
Sound okay?
Hey, what's that?
Yeah, my mom sent me a family heirloom that once belonged to my grandmother. Can you believe it? A year ago, I didn't even have a family, and now I have heirlooms, for crying out loud.
Ooh, what's up? Is this mink?
Yeah, why would my mother send me a fur? Doesn't she know me but at all? Plus, I have a perfectly fine coat that no innocent animals suffered to make.
Yeah, just some 9-year-old Filipino kids who work their fingers bloody for 12 cents an hour. That didn't happen. I made that up.
Hey. So listen, you know my friend Chris who owns the crematorium?
Crematorium Chris? Sure.
He said that he would cremate my fur coat for free if I, bring in the next person I know who dies.
Oh my God. Oh my God, look at these belts.
Don't get too attached. She's having it cremated.
What? Phoebe, oh, honey. Honey, I know you're quirky and I get a big kick out of it. We all do, actually. But if you destroy a coat like this, I mean, that is like a crime against nature. Not nature, fashion.
This is fashion? Okay, so to you, death is fashion? That's really funny. Yeah, here's Phoebe sporting, cutting-edge hairy carcass from, the steel traps of wintry Russia. I mean, you really think this looks good? 'Cause I do. I can't sit here anymore. I have to walk places.
Kids, what are you doing with the coat? How about the whole animal rights thing?
Well, I've been reading up, and for your information, minks are not very nice. Okay, I admit it. I love this coat, okay? It's the best thing I've ever had wrapped around me, including Phil Huntley. Okay, stop tormenting me! This is mink, okay? They're mean, and they hate squirrels. And, okay, most of these probably wanted to be coats. All right, fine. No, I get it. Here. You take it. Are you happy now? I'm cold!
Are you happy now? I'm cold. Okay, we go back. Yeah. So Phoebe here, what is happening? It is that her beliefs, her strong beliefs were that no animal should suffer for anyone to get rest. And but when she had the mink coat around herself, the moment she looks in the mirror, she goes, "Oh, it looks good." So right there, dissonance begins acting. Resonance begins to generate discomfort. And at the same time that to be able to keep the coat, she would have to confront and change all her beliefs. Conformity was trying to get into place. She began to find that minks were mean and they fight with the squirrels. So exactly at this moment, we have the example of cognitive dissonance and conformity. What is conformity? Conformity is the act of matching attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, group norms, politics. Norms are implicit, they are specific rules, they are shared by a group or individuals, and they guide their interactions with others. So many times people choose to conform to society rather than to pursue their own desires, because it's often easier to follow the path others have made already, rather than forging a new path, rather than forging your own path. And I will go with more examples. I believe this slide suits today's date, because it's Teacher's Day. Thank you, Raquel, for being our teacher. And this is perhaps a way to honor all of us who have once or twice or who actually teach every day. So the first example, the bards. In this example, people were shown several cards. They were subjects to another experiment. And the idea was to investigate. They said that the idea was to investigate visual accuracy. They were told to match the card on the left with what bar corresponds to the same measure on the bar on the left. What they didn't know was that there were about 12 people in this experiment, but 6 of them were actors. So for the first round, second round, third round, everybody was giving the right answer. Everybody was using visual accuracy to get the exact proportion and dimensions for the bars they were showing. However, by the fourth round, the actors began to lie, began to choose the wrong answer. And repeatedly, one after the other, were giving the wrong answer. So when it would get to the real subject, the real people in the experiment that knew nothing about, they would listen that the previous guy had given the wrong answer. And so it was really conflicting. One guy gives wrong answer, 2 guys gives the wrong answer, 3rd guy gives the wrong answer. Am I really right to say what I feel, what I see, what I recognize as the right answer? And that was part of the experiment, really to test how often people tend to follow the group in order to feel that they belong to that. The results from this experiment, okay, the results after 18 rounds revealed that 23% of the students always gave the right answer, regardless of what they heard before. 72% conformed with the majority at least one time. And 5% completely conformed to peer pressure. They always gave the obviously wrong answer because it was what he heard from the 6 actors in the experiment. Another story, another example, this happened to me. It was a Sunday afternoon. My husband and I went to this bakery, and we had to park our car. This is a pretty big space. They have underground parking space, 2 floors underground. However, the space outside that gets to the entrance of the bakery, you don't need to validate your ticket. You just go inside and you don't need to get any paper, right? And I use a special disabled parking space. Next to my space, there was a space for pregnancy slot. And there was a man in the car that was trying to use this slot. He was trying to go into this space. He wanted to be in this area. So I look at him, and as soon as I look at him, he puts his head outside, he looks at me, and he says, "That will be just a minute. I'm going to be here just for a second, just for a while. There will really be, and nobody will notice. There will be very fast." I felt that I should look at him and say, but I didn't. I felt that I should have looked at him and said, "Oh, yes, sir. So when is your baby due? Your water broke just now?" But I kept to myself and I said nothing. I was experiencing conformity at that point. So when is it socially acceptable to use the pregnancy parking spots? One more example. Casablanca, the movie Casablanca. Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. I don't remember the names of the characters in the story, but the story is, spoiler alert, they have an affair during one weekend in Morocco, and she's married to another guy, and he is not there. She's going to meet with him again in the place. But in the final scene, at the end of the movie, she has to go into the plane and leave her affair, leave Humphrey Bogart. And he tells her, "You go, kid. You just go and you do what you have to do." The right thing to do was that she would return to her husband. And if she had not entered that plane, would she have regretted for the rest of her life? Maybe not. Maybe yes, maybe not. Because one thing that the theory tells us, it is that after 1, 2, 3 years, you learn to live with the choice you made. Even if it hurts, even if it's hard, but life goes on. And you needed to get up the next day and get things going and move on. So that's one more example. And the one that has affected me the most, because here the consequences are very negative, very dreadful. The case of the Central Park Five. These people were condemned and accused of being the one that brutally raped and beat a woman in Central Park in the 80s. This was a very well-documented case, and they were sentenced to more than 20 years, and they were young. They were probably 16, 17. So basically, their lives and the lives of their families was just ruined. And that this was a court decision, okay? And imagine that as we speak right now, there are maybe hundreds of people that are languishing in prison, innocent people who did not have the benefit of DNA tests at the time of their incarceration. And conviction was the proof of their crime. And in that case, after years, another psychopath confessed the crime 12 or 13 years later, he confessed that he was the one who actually had murdered, had bitten and violently raped the woman in Central Park. So, of course, they were without second hearing, without another process in court, they were set free. And this is them now. They were exonerated. One of them is part of the Democratic National Convention and now is working for Kamala and during Kamala's campaign. So you can imagine for the judge that wrongly convicted these 5 guys and took years out of their lives. The state had to pay, and they were innocent, but the effect and the damage had already been done. So cognitive dissonance explains that for the judge, for the attorney, the problem was just not that she was evil or that, she had the intention, she had prejudice, or she had the intention of keeping innocent people. But the problem was the possibility that she had made a mistake. So it is, she believed she was a decent, moral, good person, but having to admit that her choice was wrong was something that, just could not be part of her everyday life. So how far do we go with justification? How far can justification stretch? One more example. Condoms example. This is one that Eliot makes a narrative in his book. He was working for college, and this was during the 80s, and it was difficult to get students to use condoms. Maybe less than 17% of the students would use condoms. Yeah, less than 17% of the sexually active students use condoms. The others refused to use condoms. They said it would spoil the fun, and it was something difficult and complicated, etc. So Elliot Emerson was given the task of creating a campaign in order to make college students understand the importance of that. They did 2 things. The first thing was a movie where there are people in bed, they are having fun, you're smirking inside of the bed, and then they don't show it because at that time it was everything under the sheet. But the woman is helping the man trying to use the condom. Oh, apparently it worked, because 2 or 3 weeks after the video was exposed there, they came back and they carried the same research, and the number of people that would be using condom had increased. However, 4 weeks later, that returned and is saying the same. It went down and decreased. And they asked it, why you're not using condom anymore? Because it's not as much fun as what we saw in the movie. So the movie was an external factor that was helping or stimulating people to use condoms. The second alternative, the second plan, the second part of the campaign was they would collect testimonials of people that were trying to preserve and educate young people to use condoms because they had just been introduced to sex life. And the idea was that they would be preserving their own lives and preserving good hygiene for everyone else. One point, however, was interesting when they asked the people that would give testimonials was that, and you, when was the last time you remember you used a condom? So in that situation, we also face hypocrisy because it's much easier to tell people what to do rather than do it yourself. And this leads us to try to understand racism and prejudice. Racism is the most detestable trait of human behavior. One way to understand that it is what Sapolsky tells in his book. Within 50 millisecond exposure to face of someone of another race, it activates the amygdala. The amygdala is a part in the brain that is responsible for instantaneous reactions. So there is even a psychological test called the implicit association test, where the capacity to distinguish groups is tested, This capacity has made us survive. It has helped us feel safe and secure along millennials. So we feel good, we feel safe, we feel we can protect ourselves from danger when we feel we are in a community. It does not excuse racism. It just explains neurologically what's happening, because we're able to take that information to the neurofrontal cortex and judge and balance and understand that, you can control one stimuli. You can understand it better. There is no excuse for that. However, when we see the sentence from President Trump, former President Trump, who says, quote, "Frankly, I have no time for politically right, and I don't believe this country doesn't either." Right there in this instant, prejudice gets justification, reinforcement. And I also find the sentence from Oliver Wendell, who is also a very popular judge a long time ago in the United States, and he says, "The mind of a bigot is like the pupil of the eye. The more light you pour upon it, the more it will contract." So how do we deal with this? We deal with this getting to know more about cognitive dissonance. And here I have the information from Professor Matthew Lieberman. He has carried out experiments with fMRIs, and he proved that the same area in the brain that experiences pain, broken arms, broken legs, etc., is the same area when you experiment social rejection. His experiment was that, people were inside the the machine, the fMRI machine, and they were shown images of a ping pong game or a ball that would be transferred from three people. Each one of the ones inside the fMRI was one of the recipients of this ping pong ball. So when first they were passing the ball to the three of them, but after 1 or 3 minutes, just the two of them would be using the ball, would be receiving this image ball. And that it was when he was able to record that that third element that was not receiving the ball any longer was experiencing, or there was a light inside the brain that is the same area where we experience social pain. So experiencing rejection is comparable to physical pain. And I believe this is pretty much all the examples I had to show, and I want to share with you today. I hope you are curious and you want to learn more, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here and show this to you today. Thank you.